And we're back. We're coming at you live from Graziano's restaurant in Canastota, New York. And joining me right now, man needs no introduction, Hall of Famer, and in my opinion, one of the best boxing commentators out there, Al Bernstein. Al, glad you could join us, my man.
Nice. Thank you very much.
What's happening?
Well, we're having a great weekend. Just had a beautiful lunch here at Graziano's, my second straight beautiful lunch here at Graziano's. And now we're going to visit on the radio, and it's already been a funny weekend, and looking forward to the rest of it.
You know, some stuff's been going on in the boxing world.
Really? I had no idea.
And you're the right guy to ask. You know, this whole movement with Golden Boy Promotions and the departure. I've been getting a lot of mixed, you know, correspondence, reactions, opinions from fans and you know, viewers or listeners, whatever. And some think it's bad, some think it's good. I actually think it might work out. You know, some people were saying, oh, well, this is the end of the Cold War. And I'm saying, well, it might be another dimension of the Cold War. I think it might work out for us, for the boxing people. What's your thoughts on this initially?
You know, I think that the problem is that there's no way to know how this is going to shake out. For the uninitiated, Richard Schaefer resigned from Golden Boy and as their CEO, and no one's quite sure what his next move will be or whether he'll be involved in boxing. The presumption is he will, but we don't know what's going to happen. I think if somebody sat down and said to you, yeah, this is how it's going to go, I think they'd be guessing.
You know, you're right that it seems like it's a cloud, but it might also be, you know, the other side of the coin. That, you know, it has been kind of dragged on a little bit, and we've heard this, and one side says, oh, everything's fine, the other side says, no, it's not. And it's almost like a sigh of relief because, you know, I got a chance to see him yesterday, and he seemed very happy. You know, do you think like maybe some pressure is lifted? Maybe the real pressure hasn't started yet, but you think the initial part of it might be off?
Maybe. I mean, I'm just going by how I think it would affect me if I was, and maybe he's different. I don't know that you'd want to be asked about that for 3 days leading up to
right,
it. I just
exactly.
Your point's well taken, and I think at a certain point, probably that the impasse that he reached with Richard Schaefer was something that was probably weighing on him, but I don't know that he would want this moment to have it. And it didn't really, you know, it did in a way get decided for him and for Golden Boy because Schaefer left, but it really didn't quite all play itself out yet.
Now, you know, do you think, like, in my opinion, I think the more top promoters we have that are that level, that Golden Boy, the merrier. I think the competition's good.
Well, it's good if there are matches to be made together. In other words, and listen, the other thing I find humorous is this canard that somehow in the old days Bob Arum and Don King worked together a lot. They did not. Okay, that's a myth. That's a joke. Occasionally they would do a big fight.
When they had to.
When they had to, when they were forced to. So the problem is boxing is laissez-faire capitalism run amok. You know, it's like it would be because there are no rules. So the problem is you have all these entrepreneurial people making up the rules as they go along. If Major League Baseball or the National Football League, we can all think of about 5 or 6 owners who, if left to their own devices, would be no
the one difference, and you're right, you know, that there is a misconception that they work together more than they really did. But it seemed that when the paths had to cross
Right.
for that fight that we had to see, they got it done.
Sometimes, yeah.
They put their differences aside and they all made their
Right.
money and they they did what they had to do, which is something that at least to this point has not taken place.
It hasn't taken place in recent years with Golden Boy and Topper. No. Now, again, depending on how this all shakes out, Oscar De La Hoya has already indicated whatever his company ends up being with Golden Boy, he wants to do business with Arum, and we'll see what happens.
Well, only time will tell on that one.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see. Again, it is so new, and there's pieces of the puzzle and certain components that haven't been sorted out yet, so we won't know.
Now, as far as Oscar, being inducted tomorrow in the Hall of Fame, we've been talking a lot about him, and I like that in Hall of Fames you wait 5 years. It gives you a chance to digest their career and really, take a look at it
Right.
deep. And, when you look at Oscar's career, I mean, this guy is clearly an all-time great. He's never ducked anybody. He's had some great performances. I mean, obviously you've been involved with his fights before and stuff.
Sure.
I mean, what's your overall opinion as a whole for Oscar De La Hoya?
He's a superb fighter. He's won at many different weight divisions. Reach his full potential? Maybe not. Maybe not. But some of it may have been hand issues. Some of it may have been business issues. Some of it may have been changing trainers. More often than Madonna changed boyfriends. Could be anything. But Oscar De La Hoya was a terrific fighter who deserves to go in the Hall of Fame.
Somebody made a comment to me, and we were talking about, and Obakar's name came up, and somebody said, he's got to win over Yuri Boy Campus. I'm like, wait a minute, that was Yuri Boy Campus a decade ago.
Yeah, he was a good fighter.
That's not the Yuri Boy Campus that's fighting now.
No.
So
he was still a good fighter
right.
when De La Hoya fought him.
Yeah, he fought everybody.
If there was the criticism of De La Hoya, if there was one that was valid for a little while, was early in his career he was fighting a lot of fighters who were coming up in weight, but that was just an aberration. I don't think there's any debate about his level of competition or the challenges he was willing to take on. He took on every challenge.
I think if he was physically able, and maybe I'm jumping the gun, but I think he would want to get back in the ring right now, to tell you the truth.
Probably.
Well,
I think, think about, I think for most athletes, and especially true with boxers, you're allowed to fight as long as you can pass the physical. I mean, I always joke about Steve Carlton. He would want to pitch right now in the major leagues if a team would take him.
Right.
He wanted to pitch till he was 50, right? But no team would take him. But in boxing, if you can pass the physical and you have marketing, name power, you can always fight. But obviously, Oscar's not going to fight now.
Let me jump off the Hall of Fame for a second, and with that train of thought, they wouldn't let Sergio Martinez, who's fighting tonight against Miguel Cotto, wear his knee brace. Now, there's a lot of opinions about that, and one of the things I was trying to justify is, do you think, like with the medical situation, and when a fighter gets approved by the doctor, says, hey, he's physically fit, he's not being approved with a knee brace on. Do you think that had anything to do with it?
Well, I mean, it's a sheath, and I mean, I don't understand. If you were playing basketball, you could wear a knee brace. If
Right.
you were playing football, you could wear a knee brace. If you're playing hockey, you could wear a knee brace. I mean, what is it? What I just don't understand what advantage it would give the fighter other than just being a stabilizing force for his knee. I mean, I don't get that, but maybe there's and previously you were able to wear. He's been able.
Yuri
to wear
Foreman did.
Yeah, Yuri Foreman wore a knee brace. So why is he different than Martinez? That's a mystery to me.
Yeah, no, it's crazy.
Yeah, I don't really understand that because it's not. I don't see where it's giving him an advantage of any kind.
Yeah, my point was that if it's not giving him an advantage, is he physically fit without it? You know what I mean?
Well,
I mean, because then
yeah.
then the commission's faced with, should we let this guy fight?
Well, he's clearly passed the medicals. I mean, if he hasn't passed the medicals, then that they have a bigger problem.
Right.
So they are presuming he's fit, but I mean, knee brace is not a. It's not an enhancement of any kind. It's just it's a sheath. It's really isn't it's not like he's going to be fighting with a.
It's not like he's got blades on it.
Right, or it's not an elbow pad that could get in the way or something.
Joe Calzaghe, he's going into the Hall of Fame
Yep.
tomorrow. One of my things with Joe Calzaghe is, for 90%, fought across the pond.
Right.
He fought the big names over here in his last 3 fights, and those were all aging fighters. What's your assessment of Joe Calzaghe? He deserves to be there. Is he? What's the deal?
I am an unabashed Joe Calzaghe supporter. Number one, I did some of his fights in England. He was not fighting pushovers. He was fighting. I'm wrong at least 50% of the time. I never thought Jeff Lacey was going to beat Joe Calzaghe. I'd done his fights. He's a good fighter, but he had defensive issues, and I knew Joe Calzaghe knew what he was doing. So he beats Jeff Lacey. He beats, other people fight Omar Sheikha and nobody yells at him, but he fights Omar Sheikha when he was still a good fighter, and people are giving him a hard time. I think he fought good competition. He beat Hopkins. Maybe he was aging, but Hopkins is still beating light heavyweights of note.
No,
he beat him a while ago. So I just think Joe, and he's undefeated, which is almost impossible to do in your career. I think Joe Calzaghe was a spectacular fighter, and one of the 2 or 3 best 168-pounders of all. In my mind, probably the best left hook of anyone in boxing. But Tito Trinidad's left hook would be in the top 3 or 4. Yeah. And he had a spectacular left hook. And it was a great punch. And he was a wonderful fighter. And trained by his father for the whole time of his career, who he paid tribute to last night. And, among the many iconic Puerto Rican fighters, you can make the case Tito Trinidad might be right there at the top.
You mentioned the Carl Froch, George Groves fight, and the 80,000 people in attendance, and something that we've been talking about. And that's what I love about the boxing scene in Europe, specifically in England. They draw 80,000 people. Yeah. We here in the United States, everybody's all hung up on the pay-per-view numbers and everything else, and, putting the total gross aside and everything else. We as United States people, we'd rather watch it on pay-per-view at home. It seems like in England they'll go right there and they'll fill up an 80,000 seats. What's your thoughts on that? Because it's so electric in an arena like that.
I do boxing in the UK on Channel 5, which is one of the over-the-air networks there. I do about 8 or 9 fights
Sky?
a year.
Isn't that a Sky channel?
No, it's Channel 5. It's a regular over-the-air network, but not a sports channel. And I do about 8 or 9 shows there, so I go there a lot. And there is nothing like boxing in the UK. The fans are so supportive.
for us, but also for the fighters. Is it possible to get that here in the
Well,
States?
you can get it on occasion. We had 38,000 people in San Antonio when Canelo fought Austin Trout. The Garden will be filled for Martinez and Cotto, 20,000 or whatever, and they probably could put more in there. Certain fights, can draw and do draw. It's a question of kind of creating that market. And a lot of people don't go to boxing matches. Sometimes they're overpriced, though lately promoters have been trying to price them reasonably so that they could fill the arenas. I think a lot of times now a lot of people are not attuned to going to a live boxing match. They either think it's not accessible to them or they're not used to the experience. But it is an exciting time.
It's the only sport that is no doubt better live. So
Yeah.
it's crazy.
That and hockey, probably.
Yeah, a playoff hockey game
Yeah.
is always. But now, I gotta rib you a little bit. Your boys beat up my boys 3 in a row here. The Cubbies, man, they beat the Mets. That killed me.
I have no explanation for that. I have no explanation.
Maybe they're better than the Mets.
Well, that would be tragic for the Mets.
You're telling me.
I have no explanation for the Cubs winning a 3-game series or sweeping a 3-game series against anybody, even a AAA team. I actually have a theory now about the Cubs. So at some point in life, baseball may cease to exist, right? We don't know. I mean, in other words, we've had baseball for, 100 years or whatever?
A little, way more than 100.
Well, more than 100, 115,
yeah.
20 years. Okay, let's say 100 years from now. Let's just say maybe there's no baseball. I actually have a theory that since I've seen several generations of Cubs fans over 100 years, right? I've seen them live and die and go on their way. I actually believe it's possible for the Cubs to never win a World Series ever, because I think baseball could go away before they win a World Series.
It could be.
What do you think? I mean, that is possible. Yeah, we have an Illinois guy here. Oh, well, let me tell you something, sir. We're getting security to guy. This gentleman says he's a season ticket holder for the Cardinals. Where is security when we need it? Where's the Graziano security guard to get him out of here? And you're dressed in red, too.
Those Cardinal fans.
I don't have to put up. You're not paying me anything. I'm getting paid
Hey,
nothing.
listen, I'm a Mets fan.
Here.
You think I like the Cardinals? Come on, I'm a Mets fan.
Clearly you're the root of all evil, sir. I don't mean to make this personal.
Hitting on the Mets, but every time
that is amazing. It is actually ridiculous because the Cubs are in a position to sweep no one now. So harmless.
You got me every time I think of the Cubs. I think of you.
Well, there you go.
Because we're always.
It's. I mean, they are the only people that truly hate the Cubs are Chicago White Sox fans. On the south side of Chicago, they despise the Cubs. And I grew up on the south side, and I don't dislike the White Sox or the Cubs. And I grew up on the southwest side, but somehow I became a Cubs fan. I don't know.
Somebody from Chicago told me that the reason is they think that the Cubs fans are snooty fans.
Yes.
What's up with that?
Well, here's what it is. Well, in truth, the Cubs have gotten all the most of the attention of the people that matter in the city has gone to the Cubs. And the Sox have always felt like kind of the second poor cousins, And some of that is not paranoia. Some of it's true. So they hold a grudge, and
more boxing events took place at the White Sox facilities,
true.
right?
Yeah, there's been boxing at their ballpark, and boxing now, by the way, having a little bit of a renaissance
in Chicago.
There's a number of promoters there who have put on fights, and there's really some good fight. We just had a fighter on against Adonis Stevenson, Fanfara, Andrew Fanfara, a Polish fighter who relocated in Chicago, and of course there's a huge Polish community in Chicago, and they've been very supportive of him. He fought Adonis Stevenson and was getting beaten soundly for about 8 rounds, but then there was you could feel it happening. Stevenson,
you called it.
I did call it.
You
yeah,
did.
I did call it. And thank you for pointing that out. You're being nice to a Cub fan.
No,
that's good. I appreciate
facts
that.
Facts are facts, Al.
All right,
you know?
You're very kind. And Fanfara came back. And here's the other thing. How many times have you seen, because I haven't seen it very often, a fighter get tired like Stevenson did, go down, and come back to win the fight?
It was amazing.
Almost never.
And,
right?
and you know, that whole fight, I'll be honest, I didn't think that fight was going to go 3 rounds.
No, it didn't look like it, the way Fanfara was getting beaten up.
And I also give Stevenson a lot of credit.
A lot of credit.
He was gassed after 3. And then because he was huffing and puffing after 3 rounds. Then
he was still winning though in all those rounds.
But
about
then
round 6 or 7 he started.
But after the knockdown, that like woke him up. He seemed like he got. Did they give him oxygen or something?
He was re-energized, and he did very well in the latter part of the fight. But it looked for all the world. That was very exciting. And so Fanfara is part of that resurgent boxing scene in Chicago.
Now, do you in that? Let's that fight. We'll move on. But did you think that fight, in your opinion, was more of Stevenson maybe taking Fanfara lightly, or did we underestimate Fanfara?
You know, I don't know if Stevenson took him lightly, but I think part of it was Fanfara being a better fighter than people had imagined he was. And I saw a video of Fanfara, and I thought he was good. The question is, you know, would he hold up to Stevenson's power? And then when we saw early in the fight Stevenson being so effective, you started to think, well, this isn't going to go well for Fanfara. But Fanfara's a good fighter. He would have beaten most of the light heavyweights in the world on that night, given the way he performed.
I don't recall seeing a fighter that was hurt as much as Fanfara seemed to be hurt. Obviously, you was ringside. You saw it better than me, but in the body. When fighters get hurt in the body, they don't come back, and he kept. I mean, even on TV, the guy, you could see the grimace in his face. I mean, tell us about that.
This fight broke all the rules because that was number one. He hurt badly to the body. You usually don't recover. A guy getting tired like Stevenson did late in the fight and goes down, they almost never come back. There were a lot of different things that happened in this fight that were very unconventional.
Al, I know you're real busy, and I appreciate you coming by. One last question. Is there any fight, aside from the obvious Pacquiao-Mayweather, is there any other fight that you really would like to see that's possible to make? You know, I know that there's been some rumor about Stevenson and Kovalev, and there's been some problems with making that one happen. So,
well, that one looks less possible now because of Stevenson coming over to Showtime. That would have been a fight that I think a lot of fans would have liked to have seen. You know, I think there's a bunch of them in the lower weight classes, and now we don't know what's possible because if in fact Golden Boy and Top Rank, whoever is left with Golden Boy, if they do business with Top Rank, already they're talking about a fight like Garcia against Pacquiao or Al. The Pacquiao-Mayweather fight not being made, and this is especially due to the general press that covers boxing on an occasional basis, it makes it look as if boxing hasn't made good matches in the last 2 years. And boxing has made good matches. The last year was the best year boxing had in 25 years.
You're right.
By far.
You're right.
And this year's pretty good. It'll get better as the year goes on. But because the Pacquiao-Mayweather fight wasn't made, there's the impression that a bunch of good matches didn't get made. Now, there are fights that, like I just mentioned one, that didn't seem possible. So there were matches that weren't possible, but we had so many good matches intramurally that we didn't care.
You know, it's almost like I say this all the time. Sometimes promoters don't promote, and what I mean by that is there's a lot of, and you just said it. There's so many talented fighters out there right now, and unfortunately, the fans don't know who they are because they're not being promoted.
Well, that's not the promoter's fault. I'm going to tell you the fault that is. That is I'm going to sound like a Republican candidate for higher office now.
They need one.
Yeah, well, it's not going to be me. I guarantee it. It's the media's fault. It is the media's fault. I mean this.
They're not supposed to promote the fighters?
No, they're supposed to talk about them objectively when there's a fight. They report on them. They're not supposed to promote them. They're supposed to report on them. And the media, of course, a radio show like yours is going to talk about them. Of course, it's going to be talked about on the internet. But mainstream press, I'm not saying they should give it more coverage than it's worth. I'm just saying they should cover it. If 1 million people watch on HBO or Showtime, and 18,000 people go to an arena, and message boards all around the world are lit up about a fight, you mean to tell me you can't get 20 seconds on SportsCenter? You mean to tell me Fox Regionals can't put it on? You mean to tell me that a newspaper in Philadelphia can't write 5 paragraphs on it? You mean to tell me the USA Today can't put 7 paragraphs when they've put 8 paragraphs on a NASCAR race, 7 paragraphs on a women's golf tournament, and I have nothing against that. I'm for that. But you mean to tell me they can't cover it proportionately? They've made a conscious decision not to cover it.
No,
I'm right, and by the way, I'm announcing my. Thank you very much.
No,
I'm announcing my candidacy for some mythical office in another 3 weeks.
You're 100% right, and the people that
I'm outraged.
The people that are here and at this type of event,
right.
The diehard boxing fan, they know all the fighters.
Right. The other people don't. Exactly.
Okay. So the water cooler discussion when we're talking about the Mets and Cubs on Monday at the water cooler.
It's because they don't know. Look, if you don't cover it, then nobody's. If a tree falls in a forest and nobody's there, we don't know the tree fell.
Did you see the commercial? It does make a sound.
Oh, does it? I didn't know that.
It says, "Somebody help me here. Somebody help me."
That would be the build it and they will come category. Yeah, no, I'm very vehement about this. I referenced hockey. It's exactly what the media has done to hockey. I'm not a hockey fan. I'm a casual hockey fan. But being objective, it's exactly what the media did to hockey. They relegated it to now. Hockey made some bad decisions. They went on a network that has fewer, people watching, et cetera, et cetera. But the media makes certain decisions about what's supposed to be. Charged with ripping my former network here, but even when they bought the Stavern Areola fight, put it on a Saturday night, here it was, a heavyweight championship fight that now is available to people not on Showtime or HBO, bigger universe. We've all seen what ESPN's capable of in terms of cross-promotion and marketing. They wrote the book on it. I was there for 24 years. I saw it firsthand. They're geniuses. They did none of that for the Stavern Areola fight. They did the bare minimum after they paid $500,000 for this fight, which is absurd. They did the bare minimum and ended up with 800,000 homes. They could have gotten 800,000 homes on Showtime or on HBO. Should have gotten 3 million on ESPN.
It's interesting you say that because at the end of last year, it looked like ESPN was actually like they were going to kick boxing to the curb. NBC took a step, and then all of a sudden they kick off 2015. They seem to have more viewer pleasing things on their weekly show and all of this stuff, and then they get the Stavern Areola fight. And I said, well, obviously I was wrong about that. They seem like they're into it, but then when you look at it the way you just point out, they're not. They're doing it half.
Right. Well, it's always been. I was there for 24 years, and other than the beginning portion. When ESPN was, I was there in 1980, essentially when it kicked off. Early in when we had the top-ranked boxing series there, their interest in boxing was, it literally was the flagship show that they had. Everything else was, monster trucks and and curling. So it was, poker, yeah. But they over the years they've had a strange love-hate relationship with boxing that they've never psychically figured out. And the Areola, to me, the Stavern Areola fight was the classic example of it, because it just was, I mean, they have a certain view of it, and they're not the only ones that are guilty of it. It's just that they set the tone for sports coverage in America.
Do you think that, people always say boxing, it's on the verge of being outlawed and everything? They've been saying this for 100 years. It's not going anywhere. And I actually think, athlete-wise, we got some really good fighters out there.
It's not often I quote Larry Merchant, but I will quote him here. He said once that boxing, nobody will ever kill boxing and nobody will ever save it. And I thought that was a very, very profound statement. It won't be killed and it won't be saved. It'll always be somewhere in the continuum in the middle. But it's always going to be there. I mean, we hit on, we're here. Can you imagine, I wrote this in my book, can you imagine the psyche or can you imagine Puerto Rico and Mexico, where boxing is a part of the national psyche, not having boxing? Can you imagine the UK never having boxing? Even in the United States, where boxing is more of a niche sport, can you imagine it not existing? And the reason I joked about baseball not existing, baseball has a bigger chance of not existing as a pro sport than boxing in 100 years. Why? Because of the salaries, because of the structure of the game. Boxing, all it takes is 10 promoters to figure out a way to make X amount of dollars, and they'll put on some boxing. Now, of course, it may be a little more of a niche sport, but it'll always be there.
One last question.
Yes.
I know I said this.
You said that 10 minutes ago.
I said it 10 questions.
I already missed the dinner tonight because of this radio.
Who's your favorite fighter of all time?
Sugar Ray Robinson.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
My man Austin's got a question for
Austin,
you.
go ahead. Okay, the question.
Because they give him a paycheck.
The question was, why don't you and your other colleagues on TV criticize all the weight divisions? Well, I have criticized it. I mean, I don't. The forum where I'm on the fight. There's a reason why I don't do it on the fights. I have a different function on the fights. In other words, this forum is a forum where you can talk about things like that because it's a long-flowing forum. I have a different responsibility. I'm there to cover boxing matches so that I don't take the focus away from that match or whatever. I think that I've said this many years, that's one of the biggest problems boxing has.
Well, every fight, all these fighters are in the ring with these ridiculous belts. And if somehow, if the TV networks just refuse to recognize the WBC, they'd cease to exist.
Well, but it wouldn't. Right, but it wouldn't. They would still have those fights. No, they wouldn't cease to exist. We don't either. I mean, we don't glorify them or not glorify them. We simply say it's for that title. Now, in the old days, television. Here's how television is to blame for it, because in the old days when boxing was on the afternoon fights on the over-the-air networks, ABC, CBS, NBC. They wanted championship fights, so they asked for championship fights, and they allowed all these organizations to spring up. That was how it started. Yeah.
Well, if you go back to the 50s, people would watch the television fights, see the number 10 contender fight.
I understand. Yeah, that's the way it should be. I agree. But it's not going to go there again because 4 organizations got their foothold in, and whether we recognize them or don't recognize them, they're going to get sanction fees. But here's the thing: boxing has trended away from that. Really, if you think about it, because it's more the matchup, and even the over-the-air, the cable networks like Showtime and HBO have vetoed matches. For instance, you'll notice you're not seeing like you used to a famous fighter fight a number 1 contender who isn't worthy. That doesn't happen that often anymore. And the reason it doesn't happen is because, yeah, you may have to fight that contender to keep your WBA or WBC or WBO or IBF title, but the executives at Showtime or HBO aren't willing to pay you the kind of money it takes to put it on those networks. So you're seeing less of that now.
Well, you had the fighter from Canada a couple of weeks ago.
Thierry Jean? It was months ago.
Stevens, is that his name? I don't even know these guys' names.
Oh, Donis Stevenson, yeah.
And he should be fighting that Russian.
Well, but wait. Well, there's a reason for that. That's part of the TV wars. Right, we are stuck with it.
The networks can't say, "Hey, that's it. We're not going to recognize."
Well, they can. I mean,
it's not going to work.
Yeah, I mean, you could say, and we don't go overboard on them. But here's the thing. But here's what I do say, and I'm not looking at this through rose-colored glasses. With all that, the last 20 months in boxing have produced dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of great matchups. So. Yeah, you know.
Al, listen, man, I appreciate you coming by. I know this guy can aggravate the hell out of us.
No, I mean, some of these guys.
Thank you very much.
No, we're not aggravated. The Cardinal fan has me aggravated.
Well, I don't know
that I don't like.
I don't know why he's still at it.
And I refer to you simply as the Cardinal fan. That is your. No,
we got one.
See, some people are going to think I'm serious about that. I'm buying him a drink when we're done.
Do you have one more time for another question?
All right, go ahead.
One more question. John, you want to give? He's got a question. You want to give him the mic?
Okay. I'll say hi to you. All right, it's okay. All right, one more question.
Al didn't know what he got into.
Yeah, I know. I had to come out here. Where's your assistant that came in and dragged me out here?
Well, that's why we sent her in to get you.
Yeah, where is she? I was jaunty jolly eating lunch. I'm not going to get a nap in. Go ahead.
Hi, Al. Yeah, I work for a few websites. I come to the
do.
boxing matches, and I write about the fighters, who they are, and cover it from
and the internet. And without the internet, by the way, boxing would have a
it brought
big
it back.
problem.
It brought it back.
So I guess what my question is, can you put your finger more on what it's going to take to getting things out to where is it the sanctioning organizations, all these things that the TV networks don't want to deal with? Because I'm looking at the UFC. And kids are watching this. It's out there for the youngsters. They're buying into that. And I'll go to an Andre Ward fight, and there's hardly anybody there.
Well,
and I'd like to see 80,000 people watch a Ward fight.
Right.
Well, can you put your finger on more? I know you're saying that, you got the networks and all this. What is this going to take? Because I know boxing's went to try to get on NBC. Where are we going with this? Where's it going to end up? And
well, I don't think I am one of those people that thinks that MMA, mixed martial arts, and boxing can coexist under a big combat sports tent and be okay with each other. I don't think it's one or the other. And I've done some MMA matches, play-by-play on them, and I respect the nuances of that sport, and it's a very difficult sport to be good at. But part of the reason why they've gained a certain amount of attention. And by the way, now MMA has the same issues that boxing's facing. They're maxing out in terms of their audience because it's such an edgy sport. And they're having trouble building stars. So they're having the same growing pains that any other sport would have. But again, they became the treat of the month. And what happened is, for instance, I'll get back on the USA Today. They own a MMA radio.
Rub. It's
Can I snort this or what?
It'll make your hair grow, but take a couple of them.
I could use that in the front. It's a little bit. You wouldn't understand that problem.
No,
of course,
I would. It's good, but
no,
Al, I appreciate it.
Very nice to be here. And I'll come back the next time and we'll discuss nuclear disarmament.
Well, no, we'll see how the.
We solved all these problems.
We'll see how the Mets and Cubs are doing. Let's discuss that.
Yes, and we're not going to mention that other team that we mentioned before. It
No,
starts
I
with
can't
a C,
no.
and it has many fans. But
Can we agree that we both don't like those guys?
yeah, we don't. And you know
And
what's galling about the Cardinals? Here's what's galling about them, and then I'm going to go. They're always good. They never have a rebuilding year. They have an
like the
amazing
Yankees.
organization. They're like it's the farm system. It's even when they change general managers, they change ownership even. It doesn't matter. They're always good. That's disgusting.
It's a lack of a curse that we have to deal with.
That's right. All right.
Al, thank you very much, my man.
See you guys.
All right.
Bye.
Hey, we're going to take a break. We'll be right back.